My name is Madison Clark. I'm 34 and 3 years ago, my sister Emma threw $480,000 back in my face like it was pocket change. She screamed that she didn't need my guilt money and that our family would never forgive me for what I'd done. Fast forward to today, and guess who just called my hotel's reservation line, desperately begging for a last-minute booking for her dream wedding, the same sister who once told me I was dead to her. What Emma doesn't know is that the luxury resort she's trying to book for her perfect day is mine. And after what she put me through, I'm about to show her what real family loyalty looks like. Hey everyone, before we dive into this wild family revenge saga, I want to know, where are you watching from today? Drop your location in the comments. If you're ready for a story that'll make your jaw drop with family drama that puts soap operas to shame, smash that like button and hit subscribe, because this tale of sisterly betrayal and ultimate payback is about to get intense. Trust me, you won't want to miss what happens when family, money, wedding, dreams, and years of resentment collide in the most satisfying way possible. Growing up, Emma and I were inseparable. She was 2 years older and I worshipped the ground she walked on. Our parents, Robert and Linda Clark, owned a small but successful construction company in suburban Atlanta. Nothing fancy, but it provided a comfortable middle-class life. Emma was the golden child, straight A's homecoming queen, full scholarship to Georgia Tech for business. I was the artsy one, always sketching hotel lobbies and dreaming of hospitality management, which my parents saw as playing pretend. When I announced I wanted to study hospitality at Cornell, the family dinner turned into a battlefield. Why waste money on hotel management when you could study something practical? My father demanded. Emma sided with them, rolling her eyes, as she said Madison's always been the dreamer. Someone needs to talk sense into her. That comment stung more than my parents' disapproval. I'd expected my sister to support my dreams, to understand that I wanted something different than our family's construction legacy. Instead, she seemed almost pleased to watch them tear apart my aspirations. The hospitality industry is brutal, she added with a smirk. You'll be back home within a year, probably pregnant and waiting tables. I paid my own way through Cornell, using student loans, part-time jobs, and a small inheritance from my grandmother that my parents tried to convince me to invest more wisely. Emma would call occasionally, usually to update me on her latest achievements or to subtly suggest I was making a mistake. You know, there's still time to transfer to a real business program, she'd say. Mom and Dad would probably help with tuition if you came to your senses. After graduation, I moved to California and worked my way up through various hotel chains. I started as a front desk clerk, moved to guest services, then management. Every promotion felt like a small victory against my family's expectations. Emma, meanwhile, had married her college boyfriend Derek, joined Dad's construction company, and was living the life everyone expected of a Clark daughter. The distance between us grew wider with each family phone call. Emma would passive-aggressively mention how proud our parents were of her contributions to the family business, how Derek was such a catch compared to my series of failed relationships with artistic types and dreamers. When I finally landed a management position at a luxury resort in Napa Valley, I called to share the news. Emma's response was crushing. "That's nice, Madison. Mom says you're still single though. Career success doesn't mean much if you're going to die alone." Our parents rarely called me directly anymore. All communication filtered through Emma, who seemed to enjoy her role as family spokesperson. She'd relay messages about holiday plans with an air of superiority, often adding her own commentary. "Dad says you can come for Christmas if you want, but don't expect him to pretend to understand your career choices." The final breaking point came during a rare family visit when I was 28. I'd just been promoted to general manager, and I was finally proud enough of my achievements to try mending fences. But the entire weekend was filled with snide comments about my temporary career questions, about when I'd settle down, and Emma's constant need to remind everyone about her successful marriage and growing influence in the family business. On my last night, I overheard Emma talking to Derek in the kitchen. "She's just going through a phase. This hotel thing isn't sustainable. Madison's always been irresponsible with money and relationships. Give it a few more years and she'll come crawling back, expecting Dad to give her a job she doesn't deserve." That conversation changed everything. I realized my family didn't just doubt my choices, they were actively hoping I'd fail. Emma, my former best friend and confidant, had become my harshest critic. The sister, who once braided my hair and shared secrets, now seemed to take pleasure in my perceived failures. I stopped calling after that visit. If they wanted to write me off as the family disappointment, I'd prove them wrong on my own terms. Little did I know that my path to success would eventually give me the power to make them all regret their treatment, and that Emma's wedding day would become the perfect stage for the ultimate family reckoning. After that devastating family visit, I threw myself into work with an intensity that surprised even me. The luxury resort in Napa Valley became my second home, and I learned every aspect of the business from the ground up. I studied guest preferences, memorized wine pairings, and could spot a dissatisfied customer from across the lobby. My dedication didn't go unnoticed by the resort's owner, Margaret Castellane, a formidable woman in her 60s who'd built her hospitality empire from nothing. Margaret became an unexpected mentor. Unlike my family, she saw potential in my obsessive attention to detail and genuine love for creating perfect guest experiences. "You have the instincts," she told me during one of our weekly strategy meetings. "But you need to think bigger. Don't just manage a property, envision owning one." Under Margaret's guidance, I began learning about property acquisition, financing, and development. She taught me to read market trends, understand luxury consumer psychology, and most importantly, how to identify undervalued properties with potential. The secret, she said, is finding places with good bones that others have given up on. Meanwhile, my family continued their pattern of dismissive communication. Emma would send occasional texts updating me on family news, always with an underlying tone of superiority. "Dad landed the biggest contract in company history," she'd write. "Derek got promoted to senior project manager. We're doing really well here. Hope your hotel job is going okay." I never mentioned my growing responsibilities or the fact that Margaret was grooming me for bigger things. Let them think I was just another hotel employee. Their underestimation would fuel my determination to succeed beyond their wildest dreams. The opportunity that changed everything came when I was 30. A historic but run-down resort property in Big Sur came on the market. The 1922 era estate had been neglected for years, and most investors saw only the massive renovation costs and challenging location. But I saw potential: spectacular ocean views, incredible architecture, and a perfect setting for ultra-luxury hospitality. Margaret agreed to co-invest with me, providing most of the capital while I contributed sweat equity and would manage the property. "This is your chance to prove you can think like an owner," she said. "Don't let me down." The next 2 years were the hardest of my life. I lived on site during the renovation, working 18-hour days alongside contractors, designers, and craftsmen. I learned to negotiate with suppliers, manage construction crews, and handle the 1,000 tiny crises that arise when transforming a forgotten property into a luxury destination. During this period, my family communication dwindled to almost nothing. Emma sent a Christmas card with a photo of her and Derek looking perfectly happy in front of their new house. The message inside was brief. "Hope you're doing well. Dad says the construction business is booming. We're thinking about starting a family soon." I didn't tell them about my project. Why share my dreams with people who'd already proven they didn't believe in me? Instead, I poured my energy into creating something extraordinary. The resort would feature 12 exclusive suites, each with private terraces overlooking the Pacific. The main lodge would house a world-class restaurant, a spa, and event spaces perfect for intimate weddings and corporate retreats. As opening day approached, I realized I'd created more than just a business. I'd built a sanctuary that represented everything my family said I couldn't achieve. The property was booked solid for its first 6 months, with guests paying premium rates for the exclusivity and stunning setting. Margaret was so impressed with the results that she offered to sell me her share of the property. "You've proven you can run this place better than anyone," she said. "It's time for you to be the sole owner." Using the property's success as collateral, I secured financing to buy out Margaret's stake. At 32, I was the sole owner of one of California's most exclusive boutique resorts. The girl who'd been told she was wasting her time on hotel management now commanded rates of $2,000 per night and had celebrities and tech executives competing for reservations. But success felt hollow without family recognition. Part of me still hoped that one day they'd acknowledge my achievements, that Emma might call to congratulate me or express pride in her little sister. That call never came. Instead, I focused on expanding my business, always wondering if the day would come when my family would finally understand what they'd lost by writing me off. That day was closer than I thought, and it would arrive in the form of a desperate phone call that would give me the chance to show Emma exactly what her rejection had cost her. Everything changed on a rainy Tuesday morning in March, when my lawyer called with news that would shatter my family's carefully constructed hierarchy. My grandmother, Rose, my father's mother, who'd always been the family rebel, had passed away peacefully in her sleep. But it wasn't her death that shocked me, it was what she'd left behind. "Madison, you need to sit down for this," Attorney Peterson said. "Your grandmother's will contains some unexpected provisions." Rose had always been different from the rest of the Clark family. While my parents focused on practical matters, and Emma played the perfect daughter, Grandma Rose had encouraged my dreams. She'd traveled the world in her youth, spoke 3 languages, and had run a successful antique business for 40 years. When I left for Cornell, she'd quietly slipped me an extra $1,000 for following your heart, sweetheart. "She's left you the primary inheritance," Peterson continued. "The house, the antique business, and her investment portfolio. The total value is approximately $2.4 million. My phone nearly slipped from my hands. While I'd been building my resort from nothing, my grandmother had been accumulating wealth that dwarfed my family's construction business. But the real shock came next. There are also specific instructions regarding your parents and sister. They each receive $50,000 with a condition: the money can only be accessed if you personally deliver it to them. Grandma Rose had crafted the perfect test. She'd given me the power to be magnanimous or petty, knowing full well how my family had treated me. The will included a handwritten letter addressed to me: "My dearest Madison, if you're reading this, it means I'm gone, and you've discovered that I've been watching your journey more closely than anyone realized. I know about your resort, your success, and, sadly, I know about your family's treatment of you. This inheritance is my way of setting the record straight. You are the granddaughter who followed her dreams despite opposition, who built something beautiful from nothing. The money comes with a choice: you can share it with grace or keep it as justice. Either way, you've proven you're the true inheritor of the Clark family strength. Love always, Grandma Rose." The next few days were surreal. I had to arrange Rose's funeral, during which my family was oddly subdued. They knew she'd left a will, but Peterson had only revealed that distributions would be made according to the deceased's wishes. Emma kept shooting me, questioning looks clearly, expecting that as the favored granddaughter she'd inherited the bulk of Rose's estate. At the reception after the service, Emma cornered me in the kitchen. "Madison, I know we haven't talked much lately, but I want you to know I'm proud of how you're handling Grandma's affairs. I'm sure she left instructions about dividing everything fairly among all of us. Her assumption that she'd receive an equal share or more was breathtaking in its arrogance." This was the same sister who dismissed my career, mocked my choices, and served as the family spokesperson for their disappointment in me. A week later, I made the decision that would define our relationship forever. I would offer each family member their inheritance, but I wanted them to understand what they'd lost through their treatment of me. I arranged to meet them at their favorite restaurant, the same place where they'd once criticized my career choices. When I walked into that dining room carrying 3 cashier's checks for $50,000 each, the atmosphere was electric with anticipation. My parents and Emma had clearly been speculating about Rose's wealth, and they could barely contain their excitement. "Grandma Rose left me the majority of her estate," I began. "But she also left specific amounts for each of you with the condition that I personally deliver them." I placed the checks on the table, watching their faces transform as they realized the amounts. Dad picked up his check with shaking hands. "50,000, Madison, this is incredible. Rose always was generous, but this. This was going to be even harder than I thought right now. I was going to deliver the knockout punch that would change everything between us forever. But first, I needed them to understand exactly what they'd rejected over the years, what their dismissal and cruelty had cost all of us, and why this moment was about so much more than money. I took a deep breath and looked around the table at my family's expectant faces. This was the moment I'd been unconsciously preparing for since that devastating conversation I'd overheard 5 years ago. The cashier's checks lay on the white tablecloth like peace offerings, but I knew what I had to say next would change everything. "Before you cash those checks, there's something you need to understand," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "Grandma Rose left me $2.4 million. This $50,000 represents what she thought you deserved after watching how you treated me for the past 15 years. The silence was deafening. Emma's face went through a spectrum of emotions, surprise, confusion, and then a growing anger that I recognized from our childhood fights. "What do you mean, how we treated you?" Dad's voice was defensive. "We raised you, supported you. You mean like when you told me I was wasting my life studying hospitality management? Or when Emma said I'd be pregnant and waiting tables within a year?" The words poured out of me with years of accumulated hurt. "Or how about when you stopped calling me directly because it was easier to let Emma filter all communication?" Emma's face was flushing red. "Madison, you're being dramatic. We were concerned about your choices. That's what families do, they look out for each other." "Look out for each other," I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "When's the last time any of you asked about my life, my career, whether I was happy? Emma, do you even know what I do for work now?" "You manage a hotel," she said dismissively. "You've made that clear. I own a resort. A luxury property in Big Sur that books solid at $2,000 per night. I built it from nothing over the past 4 years while you all assumed I was failing." The revelation hit them like a physical blow. Mom's hand flew to her mouth. Dad stared at me like I was speaking a foreign language, but Emma's reaction was the most telling. Her face went from shocked to skeptical to something that looked almost like betrayal. "That's impossible," Emma said. "You would have told us. Family shares good news. Family that supports each other shares good news," I corrected. "Family that consistently makes it clear one member is a disappointment learns to keep their achievements to themselves." I pulled out my phone and showed them photos of the resort. The stunning ocean views, the elegant suites, the 5-star reviews from celebrities and travel magazines. With each image, I watched their understanding of me shift and reshape. "This changes nothing about the inheritance," I continued. "Grandma Rose saw what you couldn't or wouldn't see. She watched me build something extraordinary, while you all waited for me to fail and come crawling back. These checks are her way of giving you one last chance to be the family I once thought you were." Dad reached for his check, his voice quiet. "Madison, we didn't know. If you'd told us, I tried to tell you. Every time I called with good news, you changed the subject or found ways to diminish it." Emma literally told Derek I was going through a phase and would come crawling back expecting a job I didn't deserve. Emma's face went white. She hadn't realized I'd overheard that conversation, but the truth was written all over her expression. "That was taken out of context," she started. "Was it because, from where I sat, it sounded like my own sister hoping I'd fail so she could remain the successful daughter?" The restaurant around us seemed to fade away as years of resentment and hurt crystallized into this moment. I looked at the 3 people who should have been my biggest supporters and saw strangers who'd convinced themselves that their cruelty was love. "I'm offering you these checks because Grandma Rose wanted me to have the choice," I said. "But I need you to understand something. If you take this money, it comes with the acknowledgement that you failed me as a family. That you let your own assumptions and jealousy blind you to who I really was and what I was capable of achieving." Emma's hand hovered over her check. "This is emotional manipulation, Madison. You're punishing us for being realistic about your choices." "Realistic? You mean like assuming I'd fail without even trying to understand what I was building? Like treating me like a family embarrassment while I was creating something that puts Dad's construction company to shame?" The insult hit home. Dad's face hardened. "Now wait just a minute. No, you wait." My voice rose enough that nearby diners turned to look. Do you want to know what realistic looks like? I employ 67 people. My property generates more revenue in a month than your company makes in a quarter. I've been featured in Architectural Digest and Travel Plus Leisure. Meanwhile, you all spent years convinced I was wasting my life. Emma's mask finally slipped completely. Fine, Madison. You want to know the truth? Yes, we thought you were making a mistake. Yes, we worried you'd fail. But that doesn't make us monsters. Families worry. Families express concern. Families also celebrate success, I shot back. Families ask questions and show interest. Families don't spend 5 years hoping their daughter fails so they can be right. The tension at the table was suffocating. Mom was crying quietly. Dad looked like he'd aged 10 years in 10 minutes. But Emma's face was transforming into something I'd never seen before, pure, undiluted rage mixed with wounded pride. You know what, Madison? Emma stood up, her voice shaking with emotion. Keep your guilt money. We don't need your grandmother's charity, and we don't need your condescending lectures about family loyalty. You want to play the victim. Fine. But don't expect us to grovel for your forgiveness just because you got lucky in business. She grabbed the check, and in a moment that would haunt our relationship forever, tore it in half. The pieces fluttered to the table like fallen leaves. Emma, don't, Mom. Reached for the torn pieces, but Emma was just getting started. I said we don't need it. Dad, Mom, we've built a good life without Madison's help, and we'll continue to build it without her money or her approval. She looked at me with eyes full of hurt and fury. You want to know what family really looks like? Madison family doesn't hold grudges for years. Family doesn't use money as a weapon. And family sure as hell doesn't ambush each other in restaurants to prove points about who's more successful. The words hung in the air like smoke from an explosion. In that moment, Emma didn't just reject the money, she rejected me, our history, and any possibility of reconciliation. She grabbed her purse and headed for the door, pausing only to deliver one final blow. Consider this the end of our relationship, Madison. Don't call, don't write, and don't expect us to be impressed by your resort or your money. You're dead to us. The restaurant door slammed behind her, leaving me sitting with my parents and the torn pieces of a check that represented far more than money. It was the final destruction of our family bond. What Emma didn't know was that her dramatic rejection would make her future humiliation so much sweeter. 3 years later, that torn check would seem like pocket change compared to what I'd cost her. 3 years passed in a blur of business growth and deliberate silence. After Emma's explosive rejection at the restaurant, my parents had sheepishly taken their checks, Mom crying as she apologized for not understanding, while Dad muttered about family complications. But Emma's words echoed in my mind, "You're dead to us." I threw myself into expanding the resort business. Using my grandmother's inheritance as seed money, I acquired 2 more properties, a boutique hotel in Carmel and a luxury retreat center in Mendocino. My hospitality group was now worth over $15 million, and I'd been featured on the cover of Luxury Travel magazine as one of the top 40, under 40 hospitality innovators. The success felt amazing, but it also felt lonely. Sometimes, late at night in my Big Sur penthouse suite, I'd wonder if Emma ever thought about our shattered relationship. Did she ever Google my name and discover what I'd achieved? Did she regret tearing up that check? I got my answer on a Tuesday morning in September, when my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. Pacific Luxury Resorts, this is Madison. Hi, I'm calling about booking your Big Sur property for a wedding. The voice was nervous, shaking slightly. I know this is extremely last minute, but our original venue just canceled on us, and we're desperate. Something about the voice nagged at me, but I couldn't place it. When is your event? October 15th. I know it's only 3 weeks away, but we're willing to pay premium rates. Money isn't an issue. This is my dream wedding, and your resort is the only place that could possibly save us. October 15th was indeed one of our few remaining available dates, usually held open for emergency situations or celebrity bookings. But something in the caller's voice made me pause. What's your name, please, Emma? Emma Richardson. My blood turned to ice. Richardson. She'd taken Derek's last name. After 3 years of silence, my sister was calling me without realizing it, begging for help. Can you tell me more about your situation? I managed keeping my voice professionally neutral. Our original venue was this historic mansion in Napa, but the owners just discovered structural damage and had to close immediately. We've called everywhere, and either they're booked solid or they can't accommodate our guest count. Your resort is literally our last hope. I could hear tears in her voice now. The golden child, the perfect daughter, was falling apart because her perfect wedding was crumbling. How many guests? I asked. 85. We know that's larger than your usual intimate weddings, but our coordinator said you have outdoor spaces that could work. We're willing to pay whatever it costs. 85 guests. I thought about all the people who'd witness Emma's special day, college friends, who probably heard endless stories about her disappointing sister, extended family who'd been told I was the family failure, Derek's, relatives who'd never even met me because I was persona non grata. The cost for a wedding of that size on such short notice would be $180. 000, I said. It was triple our usual rate, but not unreasonable for emergency luxury service. Done, Emma said immediately. Whatever it takes. Can you hold the date while I send the deposit? This was the moment I'd been unconsciously preparing for since she'd stormed out of that restaurant. The sister who declared me dead to her was now begging me for help, offering to pay any price for something only I could provide. Let me check our availability more carefully, I said. Can you give me a callback number? She rattled off her number and I promised to call back within the hour. After hanging up, I sat in my office staring at the ocean, my mind racing. I could simply decline the booking. Tell her we were fully committed and couldn't accommodate such a large, last-minute event. She'd never know how close she'd come to booking her dream wedding at her estranged sister's resort. Or I could accept the booking and reveal my identity at the wedding itself, watching her face when she realized who'd saved her special day. That would be awkward, but ultimately gracious, the bigger person move. But there was a third option, and the more I thought about it, the more perfect it seemed. I called her back. Emma, I've got good news and bad news. The good news is we can accommodate your wedding. The bad news is our standard policies will apply. What does that mean? Payment in full is required 72 hours before the event. No exceptions, no payment plans. And if payment isn't received by the deadline, the booking is automatically canceled with no refund opportunity. That's fine, she said, though I could hear the stress in her voice. We can make that work. Also, given the short timeline, we'll need signed contracts and a 50% deposit within 24 hours to hold the date. Understood. Can you email the contracts? Of course. And Emma, given the premium nature of this emergency booking, I want to assure you that this will be absolutely perfect. Your wedding will be everything you've dreamed of. Thank you, she whispered, and I could hear the relief flooding through her voice. You have no idea what this means to me. This resort has been my dream venue since I first saw it in magazines 3 years ago. 3 years ago. Right around the time our family imploded. She'd been following my success without realizing it. After finalizing the details, I hung up and leaned back in my chair. Emma Richardson was going to have her dream wedding at her sister's resort, surrounded by 85 guests, who thought they knew the whole story about the Clark family dynamics. She just didn't know I was planning to give her exactly what she'd given me 3 years ago, a very public reckoning that would expose the truth about family loyalty, consequences, and karma. October 15th couldn't come fast enough. The morning of Emma's wedding dawned crystal clear, with perfect October light streaming through the resort's floor-to-ceiling windows. For 3 weeks, I'd watched my sister transform from stressed bride to confident woman planning her perfect day, never once realizing she was coordinating with her estranged sister. Emma had arrived 2 days early for setup, bringing her entire wedding party and extended family. I'd remained carefully out of sight managing the event through my assistant, while watching the proceedings on security monitors. Seeing my parents again after 3 years was surreal. They looked older, more tired, but they were clearly thrilled to be celebrating their golden daughter's triumph. The bride specifically requested that all vendor interactions go through me. I'd instructed my staff. Under no circumstances should the resort owner be identified to the wedding party. As the ceremony time approached, I positioned myself in my private office overlooking the cliffside altar where Emma would take her vows. 85 guests had arrived: college, sorority sisters, business colleagues, extended family, and Derek's family from Texas. The guest list read like a who's who of everyone who'd heard some version of the story about the Clark family's disappointment daughter. The ceremony was beautiful. Emma looked radiant in her designer gown. Derek was handsome in his tuxedo, and the Pacific Ocean provided a stunning backdrop. During the vows, Emma spoke about family being everything, and how the people who truly love you will always support your dreams. The irony was so thick, I could taste it. As the reception began, I made my move. I'd planned this moment for 3 weeks, choreographing it like a theatrical performance. At exactly 8:30 p.m. after dinner, but before the dancing I would make my appearance. I changed into an elegant navy cocktail dress, and had my hair and makeup professionally done. If I was going to destroy Emma's narrative about her family, I wanted to look absolutely stunning while doing it. The reception was in full swing when I walked through the main lodge doors. The first person to spot me was my cousin Jennifer, who nearly choked on her champagne. "Oh my God, Madison," her voice carried across the reception, causing heads to turn. I watched recognition ripple through the crowd like a wave. These people knew my face from magazine covers and business profiles. I was the hospitality industry rising star, the woman who'd built a luxury empire from nothing. But more importantly, I was the sister who'd supposedly been written off as a family failure. I walked directly to the head table where Emma sat frozen, her face cycling through confusion, recognition, and dawning horror. "Hello, Emma," I said, my voice warm and clear enough for nearby tables to hear. "Congratulations on your wedding. I have to say, this resort really is the perfect venue for such a special day." "Madison," she whispered, her face draining of color. "What are you doing here?" "Well, I own the place," I said conversationally. "When my favorite sister called begging for a last-minute venue to save her dream wedding, how could I possibly say no?" The silence that followed was deafening. 85 wedding guests suddenly understood they were witnessing something far more dramatic than a family reunion. Emma's maid of honor leaned forward. "Wait, Emma, isn't this your sister who—" "I thought you said she. She told you I was a failure, didn't she?" I smiled, addressing the entire reception now. "That I was irresponsible with money and relationships. That I'd probably come crawling back to the family business when my hotel phase ended." Derek was staring at his new wife like she'd grown a second head. "Emma, you said your sister worked at a hotel, not that she owned a resort empire." "She does work at a hotel," Emma said weakly, but her voice lacked conviction. I gestured around the stunning reception space. "I work here every day. Because I own this property and 2 others worth a combined $15 million. The same hotel phase that my family spent years hoping would fail." My father stood up from his table, his face pale. "Madison, maybe this isn't the time." "Actually, Dad, this is the perfect time. Because 3 years ago, Emma stood in a restaurant and told me I was dead to her. She rejected Grandma Rose's inheritance money that could have helped start their marriage because her pride was more important than family." I turned back to Emma, who looked like she wanted to disappear into her wedding dress. "You know what the really sad part is, Emma? I would have done anything to repair our relationship. Even after years of dismissal and cruelty, I would have welcomed you back if you'd shown 1 ounce of genuine remorse or sisterly love." "Madison, please," Emma whispered, tears starting to stream down her perfectly made-up face. "Not here. Not at my wedding. Not at your wedding. The wedding you booked at my resort after calling me your supposedly dead sister and begging for help. The wedding you're paying $180,000 for, because you were desperate enough to accept any terms." The $180,000 figure caused audible gasps around the reception. That was more than many of these people made in a year. "You want to know what real family looks like?" I continued, my voice carrying across the silent reception. "Real family doesn't give up on each other. Real family doesn't hope for failure. And real family sure as hell doesn't reject someone and then unknowingly come begging for help 3 years later." Emma was sobbing now, her perfect wedding makeup running down her cheeks. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "Madison, I'm so sorry. I was wrong about everything." "You're sorry because you got caught," I said, but my voice was gentler now. You're sorry because your entire wedding party just learned that your failure sister owns the venue of your dreams. You're sorry because your husband is realizing you lied about our family situation for years. I looked around at the stunned faces of the wedding guests. For those of you wondering what happens next, let me be clear, Emma's wedding will continue. Her deposit and payments have been accepted in good faith, and despite everything, I won't ruin her actual ceremony. Relief flickered across Emma's face, but I wasn't finished. However, I want everyone here to understand something. 3 years ago, this woman rejected a $50,000 inheritance and declared me dead to her because her pride was more important than admitting she was wrong about my potential. Tonight, she unknowingly paid me $180,000 for the privilege of getting married at the resort she thought I could never build. I stepped back, letting the full impact of the revelation settle over the reception. Karma is a powerful thing. Sometimes it takes years to arrive, but when it does, it tends to be perfectly ironic. I turned to leave, then paused for one final comment. Emma, I genuinely hope you and Derek will be happy together. Marriage is hard enough without starting it with lies about family. Maybe consider telling him the whole truth about why we stopped speaking. As I walked away from the reception, I could hear the explosion of whispered conversations behind me. Emma's perfect wedding narrative had been shattered, replaced by a story that would follow her for years. The best part? She'd paid premium rates for the privilege of her own humiliation. Back in my office, I poured a glass of champagne and watched the reception limp along below. Emma had composed herself enough to continue the evening, but the energy had completely shifted. Guests kept stealing glances at her, clearly reassessing everything they thought they knew about the Richardson family dynamics. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Madison, this is Derek. We need to talk. Tomorrow. Please. I smiled and set the phone aside. Some conversations were worth waiting for. 3 years ago, Emma had rejected my attempt at reconciliation with dramatic flair. Tonight, I'd shown her the true cost of that pride. She'd spent nearly $200,000 to learn that writing off family can have consequences she never imagined. The girl who was supposedly wasting her life on hotel management had just hosted the wedding of the sister who declared her dead. And every single guest would remember this story for the rest of their lives. Sometimes, the sweetest revenge isn't about destroying someone, it's about letting them destroy themselves while you profit from their downfall. Emma had unknowingly funded her own humiliation, and I'd given her exactly what she'd given me 3 years ago, a public reckoning that revealed the truth about family loyalty. As I watched the reception wind down below, I realized this wasn't really about revenge anymore, it was about justice. Emma had learned that words have consequences, that pride comes with a price tag, and that sometimes the family member you write off becomes the person holding your dreams in their hands. The resort would continue hosting weddings. Emma would go on with her marriage, hopefully with a new understanding of humility. And I would keep building my empire secure in the knowledge that I'd proven everything I set out to prove, without compromising my integrity. The Clark family drama was finally over, but the story would be told for generations. And every time someone mentioned Emma's wedding at that stunning Big Sur resort, they'd remember the night a sister's pride cost her $180,000, and her dignity. That's what I call justice served with a view. So here's my question for all of you. Have you ever had a family member completely underestimate you, only to later need something only you could provide? How did you handle that moment of power? Drop your family karma stories in the stories comments below, because I know I'm not the only one who's experienced this kind of poetic justice. If this story hit you right in the feels, smash that like button and subscribe for more real-life family drama that proves truth really is stranger than fiction. Share this with anyone who's ever been underestimated by their own family. Sometimes we all need a reminder that living well truly is the best revenge. Thanks for taking this journey with me, and remember, never let anyone convince you that your dreams are too big or your ambitions too bold. Sometimes the people who doubt you the most end up paying premium rates for front row seats to your success. Until next time, keep building your empire and proving the doubters wrong, but maybe charge them extra for the privilege.